Hey everybody, Florentine Yu-Gi-Oh here, and if I had quite a few requests for this video, so I think it's finally time I get around to it. This is another structure deck opening. This is not a legit product. This is once again a custom Orica structure deck based on anime-only cards from Pegasus Fantasy Cards. He's basically my go-to Orica guy. The deck includes 37 commons, an ultra, a super, and a secret, but they're like full foil, like all over, so it's pretty cool. And then we've got our blurb on the back here. Use decisive power of absolute destiny and many other cards that were only in the show. This is basically Sartorius' entire deck. I believe it is Highlander. There's only one of everything. So, yeah. This is Sartorius' entire deck from the show. Structure deck, Threads of Fate. I've had quite a few requests to do this deck in particular. So, let's open it up and see what it's all about. Now, the innate nature of Arcana Force is a bit unstable due to the fact that it's basically a gambling deck. Every card requires a coin toss, and there are very few ways to make those coin tosses guaranteed to end up in your favor. So first off, we pull the deck out. It's in this nice little cardboard container. And then the cover card just slides out with a sleeve that's been cut so it's easier to retrieve. So our first card here is Arcana Force EX, the Light Ruler. This was Sartorius Kumar's Ace monster in the second season of GX. Can only be summoned by the Sky Lord, and then if heads, when it destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can add a card from your graveyard to your hand, but you can't activate it that turn. And then if it's tails, when a effect would target this card, your opponent draws one card, this card loses 1,000 attack, but then you negate the effect of the card that targets it and destroy it. So that's the Light Ruler. Pretty big boy, too. 4,000, 4,000, but can only be summoned by the Sky Lord, this particular version. So he's a little hard to bring out. So then we drop the rest of the deck out. And it's just held together by this little paper band, which is pretty cool. Now we have Arcana Force Zero, the Fool. This is one with its anime effect, where whoever side of the field it's on can choose which, the opposing player can choose what their Arcana Force effects are going to be. Which, as you imagine, you want to give this to your opponent somehow, so it's on their field, and then you just choose what your coin tosses are going to be. Pretty hard. I think the only card that can actually change control of this card to your opponent is the Strength. So that's pretty hard to resolve. But there is a cool combo in this deck that can do it. I've been looking up like Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Duels, the Arcana Force stuff, like the anime Arcana Force cards, and there's some pretty neat stuff when things, obviously, when luck is on your side. Other than that, its heads effect is it can't be targeted or affected by the effects of your spell or your card effects. And then if tails, it can't be targeted or affected by the spells of your opponent's effects. So there's that. There's number 0. He also can't be destroyed by battle. He keeps that effect from the show. But there's the Fool. Arcana Force 1, the Magician. All the Arcana Force cards have an effect that when they're summoned, toss a coin, they gain the corresponding effect. I'm going to shorten it, so I'm just going to shorten to heads. When a spell card is activated, this a card's attack becomes double its original to the end of the turn. And then tails, when a spell card is activated, your opponent gains 500 life points. So usually it's heads, good effect, tails, bad effect, is how these guys go. There's the Magician. Then we've got 3, the Empress. I don't believe 2 was ever a thing. I know the actual Arcana Force archetype is actually missing. Even if the ones from the show included are actually missing quite a few of the Arcana Tarot, the actual Tarot deck that this deck's based on. So we got the Empress here. Heads, each time your opponent normal summon or sets a monster, you can normal summon an Arcana Force monster from your hand. So that's pretty good. And then tails, each time your opponent normal summons or sets a monster, you have to send a card from your hand to the graveyard. Oh boy. Then we have the Emperor, which is Arcana Force 4. Heads, all your Arcana Force monsters gain 500 attack. Tails, all your Arcana Force monsters lose 500 attack. Pretty self-explanatory. 5, the Lovers. Or is that 6? Yeah, it's 6. Yeah, that would be 6 with the 1. I'm not very good with Roman numerals. Heads, this card can be treated as 2 tributes for the summon of Arcana Force monster, or tails, while this card's on the field, you cannot tribute summon Arcana Force monsters. And all of these have like their artwork from the anime, not their official TCG artwork. So next up we got 7, the Chariot. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, summon it to your side of the field. So it's kind of like a Goyo Guardian if you get the heads effect. And then tails, if this card is destroyed by battle, special summon this card to your opponent's side of the field. So it's like the opposite. The Strength, which is Arcana Force 8. Yep. No, that's 7. Like I said, I'm not very good with Roman numerals. No, that was 7, this is 8. Like I said, I'm terrible with Roman numerals. I apologize in advance. Heads, take control of one monster your opponent controls, or tails, your opponent takes control of all other monsters you control. So you can see the combo with this and the Fool here. If I can grab the Fool. You summon Strength, give this to your opponent, and get the Tails effect. Give this to your opponent, and then you, for the rest, basically as long as the Fool is on their side of the field, you get to choose the effects of the rest of your Arcana Force cards. There's other ways to make it so you can choose their effects. I think there's like one other card that does that. But like I said, it's a very gimmicky deck. Some of the effects in this deck are actually pretty powerful, but again, it's all reliant on a gamble. So are you feeling lucky? That's the Strength. I believe this is 12, the Hanged Man. This is one of the ones where the heads effect is negative and the tails effect is positive to reflect the actual lore behind the Hanged Man. Heads, once per turn, destroy one monster you control and inflict damage to your life points equal to its attack. Tails, once per turn, destroy one monster your opponent controls and inflict damage to your opponent equal to its attack. Very powerful effect for, if you can get the tails effect, obviously. It's very bad if you get the heads. Like I said, this is one of the few that's actually, like, reversed based on if it's upside down or right side up. Usually heads good, tails bad. This is heads bad, tails good. So, there's that. Arcana Force, Temperance. I'm just not going to say the numbers. I'm just terrible at Roman numerals again. During damage calculation, this one actually has an additional effect. During damage calculation in either player's turn, you can discard this card to take no battle damage from a battle. So it's a Karibo. And then heads, half all your battle damage you take. Tails, half all battle damage your opponent takes. So this one's basically it's a hand trap. It's basically a Karibo. So that's pretty nice. The Fiend. Heads, when this card attacks, destroy one monster on the field and inflict 500 damage to the controller of the destroyed monster. If that monster is not destroyed, destroy this card. Tails, when this card attacks, destroy all monsters on the field. This is one that could actually benefit you either way, depending on the situation. Also, the Fiend is also a light monster. I love it. Actually, they're all light monsters. The Moon. Heads, during your standby phase, you can special summon a Moon token. During each of your tails, during each of your end phases, select one monster you control and give control of it to your opponent. This is another. I didn't realize this is actually another way you can give the Fool to your opponent to then have all your Arcana Force effects be the ones you want. So that's pretty cool. Oh boy, Arcana Force 21, Zawaldo. I had to do it. Yes, that is a freaking JoJo reference. Heads, during your end phase, you can send 2 monsters you control to the graveyard to skip your opponent's next turn. Tails, during your opponent's draw phase, add the top card of their graveyard to their hand. Pretty much the same as in real life. Again, it's fun and really cool to pull off the world lock. And just like send 2 other monsters you control, skip your opponent's next turn, and then just go on from there. It's really cool. And then his Season 4 ace, Arcana Force Extra, the Dark Ruler. So it can only be summoned by attributing 3 monsters or with its own effect. Heads, this card can attack twice during the same battle phase. If this card battles twice with this effect, it is changed to a defense position at the end of the battle phase. And it cannot be changed until the end of your next turn. So it's like double attack, but then you have to go to defense for a Goblin Attack Force-like effect. And then Tails, If this card is removed from the field, destroy all cards on the field, then special summon this card during your next standby phase. That's actually pretty good. Again, he's one of the biggest boys in the deck, 4,000, 4,000. And the Dark Ruler. Then the last monster of the deck is Knight of Pentacles. Hey, Pentacles. Heads, this card cannot be destroyed by battle. It's not treated as an Arcana Force monster, but it does have an Arcana Force-like effect. Heads, this card cannot be destroyed by battle. Tails, this card cannot attack, and if it is attacked, destroyed at the end of the damage step, regardless if it has enough attack to survive or not. Now we're in the spells. Also just want to say, these cards look really cool, and he even uses, like, the real-life versions have their anime artwork, which I think is really cool. Pegasus Fantasy Cards does a great job with these. I'm not like a sponsor for him or anything. I'm just doing these videos for fun. But I'll definitely leave links in the description. I'm sure you'd appreciate the free traffic. See if you want to go buy this deck or any of his other items for yourself. So, yeah, I want to say thanks to Pegasus Fantasy Cards for making... He's basically my go-to Orica guy. And he does a lot of awesome stuff like this. Whoops. Okay, so our first spell is Ace of Sword. You pick a monster on the field, toss a coin, and toss a coin. If heads, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the selected monster's attack. If tails, you take damage equal to the selected monster's attack. So it's a gamble burn card. Arcanic Doom Scythe is actually one of the better spells in the deck, because you basically get to Foolish Burial, an Arcana Force monster. And then when your opponent's monster is destroyed by battle this turn and sent to the graveyard, your opponent takes damage equal to the attack of the destroyed monster. So that's pretty cool. It's like, you send an Arcana Force card from your deck to the graveyard to then have any of your Arcana Force monsters get a Flame Wingman effect. That's pretty neat. Cup of Ace. Different artwork, but exactly as it says on the tin. It's a Gamble Pot of Greed, with tails being the worst possible scenario. You know, heads draw 2, tails, your opponent draws 2. Divination of Fate. Activate only if a monster you control did not destroy an opponent's monster by battle this turn. So basically, if like I attacked into a Marshmallow, I get this effect. Special summon a level 4 or lower Arcana Force monster from a hand. So just another special summon. A very situational one, though. Like, you'll never, ever see this card. Future Vision. This artwork looks freaking sick. So I wonder what it does. Actually, only when your opponent controls a face-up monster, your opponent reveals cards from the top of their deck until it picks up a monster. If it's the same type as the monster on the field, your opponent gains 1,000 life points and adds all picked up cards back to their deck. Okay. It's very interesting. It's kind of like a way to see... It doesn't say they go back in any order, or that they shuffle in. Maybe it's just a good way to see like what your opponent's about to draw next, so you can kind of prepare in advance. Like I said, they only gain the 1,000 points if they pick up a monster with the same type as the one you select. So that's interesting. Yep. Intervention of Fate. This card's actually another hand trap. Hey, hand traps before hand traps. When your opponent summons a monster, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard to activate one normal spell from your hand. That's a pretty powerful effect. Like, imagine this in the real game. Intervention of Fate, Raigeki. That's pretty cool. But, yeah, Intervention of Fate. Does it have to... Yep, it has to be a normal spell, so you can't, like, activate Light Barrier or anything. And, Light Barrier... it's pretty much the same version. I think it has an extra effect. Oh yeah, this thing does have a really strong effect. It has a different effect. Basically, it has the same effect where during the standby phase, when you activate this card, toss a coin. If the result is tails, the following effects are negated until your next standby phase. Or when you activate this card. The effects of all non-Arcana Force monsters on the field are negated. So that's really powerful. And then when an Arcana Force monster is summoned, you choose which effect to apply without tossing a coin. If a monster destroys another monster by battle, the controller of that monster gains life points equal to the destroyed monster's original attack. That's also really cool. I don't know if that's on the real one, but I believe the effects of all non-Arcana Force monsters on the field are negated is not on the real one. It's been a while since I read the real version of Light Barrier, so correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. Magician's Scales is actually a very powerful card for this deck. So you tribute an Arcana Force monster, add 1 spell from your deck to your hand. Any spell, I should say. Yeah, very powerful. So you get your Light Barrier, you get Intervention of Fate, you could search for Cup of Ace, but why would you want to? You get Arcanatic Doom Scythe, which is just more deck thinning. Really powerful. Monster Reincarnation, different artwork, but it's the same effect as the real one. Discard a card, target a monster in your graveyard, and add it to your hand. Necro Sacrifice. This looks really interesting too, like that Future Vision card. Select a level 5 or higher monster in your hand. Special summon monsters from my graveyard to my opponent's side of the field equal to the number of tributes required to summon that monster. This is another way to give your opponent... I'd realize this deck has more ways to give your opponent the Fool than I initially realized. So that's really cool, actually. Your opponent chooses their battle positions, and then during this turn you can normal summon the selected monster that you revealed in your hand without tributing. That's pretty cool. Pentacle of Ace. It's just a weaker Cup of Ace. Basically, it's a Cup of Upstart Goblins. Toss a coin. If heads, draw a card, gain 500 life points. If tails, your opponent draws 1 and your opponent gains 500 life points. Reverse Reborn. This is part of the cool combo I mentioned with the Strength and the Fool. You pick an Arcana Force monster in your graveyard and special summon it in attack position and equip it with this card. So it's Premature Burial for Arcana Force. But the equipped monster is forced into its Tails effect. And when this card is destroyed, destroy the equipped monster. So you can summon... you can use Arcanatic Doom Scythe. Send Strength to the graveyard. Have the Fool on the field. Reverse Reborn. Give your opponent the Fool. Summon Strength. Strength is forced into its Tails effect. Give your opponent the Fool. It's probably the most efficient way to actually use the Fool to make it so that your opponent... so that you can pick what your Arcana Force effects are. Reverse Reborn, one of the better cards of the deck, besides Magician's Scales. Selection of Fate is kind of like a normal spell version of a Hero Emerges. Your opponent chooses a random card in your hand. If it's a monster, special summon it. So just play this when your opponent, when your hand is full of monsters. By the way, I should mention, Light Rulers are secret rare. Sorrowing of the Fool is our super rare. Once per turn, you can select your face-up Arcana Force monster you control and toss a coin to determine its effect, being sent to determine who sends cards from the top of their deck to the graveyard equal to the multiples of 300 that monster has. Heads, you do. Tails, your opponent does. Yeah, this is one of the few cards where heads is bad and tails is good. So that's cool. Suit of Sword 10. It's a double-sided... it's a Raigeki on a gamble. Destroy all monsters your opponent controls if heads. If tails, destroy all monsters you control. One of the maybe this is one of the major destruction cards of the deck. Continuous spell, the Skylord. Activate only where there's a level 7 or higher Arcana Force monster in your graveyard. You can send this face-up card along with the Material Lord, the Spiritual Lord, in order to special summon Arcana Force, the Light Ruler from hand, deck, or graveyard. So this is how Light Ruler comes out, when you have this card and you have Material and Spiritual on the field as well. Then we have Vision. Draw a card and reveal it, then shuffle it into your deck. And then if a card with the same name is played by either player, inflict 1,000 damage to your opponent. Very situational, but an interesting concept nonetheless. Then into our trap cards. We're almost done here. Ace of Wand. Activate only when a monster is destroyed by a card effect. Heads, the controller of the destroyed monsters gains life points equal to the attack of the destroyed monsters. Tails, inflict damage to the controller of the destroyed monsters equal to the attack of the destroyed monsters. It's more burn. Sartorius actually has a lot of burn, which I'm surprised. Arcana Call. Select an Arcana Force monster you control. Remove from play an Arcana Force monster in either player's graveyard. Until the end phase, the selected monster's effect gains the removed monster's effect for the same coin toss result. That's interesting. It kind of clones an effect on an Arcana Force monster. That's really interesting. Decisive Power of Absolute Destiny. Declare a monster card name. If a card with the declared name is in your opponent's deck, special summon in an attack position to their side of the field. This could either troll you or hurt you really bad, depending on the circumstance. Like, imagine this card in like real life. You could actually like summon an Ash Blossom from their deck, and then it's useless. So that's pretty interesting. On other hands, if this deck is going to go up against which other deck I think it's going to go up against, I really don't want to summon Gygus to my opponent's field. We're going to see. We're going to do some test plays before we actually record the video that this deck is going to go up against. But anyway, Decisive Power of Absolute Destiny can be really trolly. It's kind of like Lullaby of Obedience, which is interesting. Emperor's Staff. Your opponent draws a card. This turn, cards you control cannot be destroyed by opponent's card effects. So in exchange for giving your opponent a card, your entire field is protected from destruction. That's really cool. Reversal of Fate. All Arcana Force monsters on the effects now have their opposite coin toss result effect. Pretty self-explanatory. The Material Lord. You can only activate this when there's a level 4 or lower Arcana Force monster in your graveyard. Discard a level 5 Arcana Force to add the Spiritual Lord from your deck to your hand. So this is basically the first one you want to activate, and then it searches the second one. Then we have the Spiritual Lord. When there's a level 5 or 6 Arcana Force monster in your graveyard, sending a level 7 Arcana Force monster from your hand to the graveyard to search the Sky Lord. And then we already saw what the Sky Lord does. You activate it when there's level 7, send all 3, summon Light Ruler, big damage. And the last card in the deck is our Ultra Rare. This is Tour of Doom or Tour of Death. During your opponent's standby phase, you toss a coin. It's the real life effect. They were the same in the show. So basically, heads your opponent cannot summon, tails you cannot summon during that turn. During your next turn. So, yeah, heads, very good. Tails, very bad. Basically, stopping your opponent from summoning is like the name of the game. Is really powerful effect. But on the flip side, that you have to lose your effects. You lose your summon if you fail the coin toss, is what I meant to say. So anyway, this is the amazing, incredible structure deck, the Threads of Fate. Once again, by Pegasus Fantasy Cards. I'll leave links to his eBay, his Etsy, his Facebook. So if you want to order some of these cool decks like this one, you can do so. Yeah, I'd have to rate it. Definitely, his stuff's kind of pricey, but for the materials he uses and the quality of the product, it is well worth it. And you get a very cool deck that's faithful to the anime with cards that'll probably never see the light of day in the TCG, along with cards with their other anime effects. So, if you enjoyed this video, please, usual plugs, insert usual plugs here, like, comment, subscribe, tell me what you thought. If you want to get, like I said, if you want to get something like this for yourself, I'll leave links to his stores in the description. And if you want to you can also request which of his decks I open and review next and explain. And tell me which decks you want to see fight each other. Fighting each other, there has to be some reason. Like, we can't have someone like Joey go up against Darts by himself, because I think we all know who win that already. Again, it's very interesting to see all the really cool Orica stuff people make out there. But Pegasus Fantasy Cards is one of my favorites. So, with all that out of the way, we'll see you in the next video. This has been Florentine Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm out of here.